Jasmine El-Gamal in Amman, Jordan, joins us now. Thank you so much, our guest on this topic, to go further on the crisis that's ongoing in the Middle East. You are a political analyst and former Pentagon Middle East Advisor. Thank you so much for joining us on France 24. Tell us, Ms. Gamal, how seriously should we be viewing this announced threat from Iran?
And it's quite a serious moment, to be honest. I mean, obviously, the Israeli attack on this Iranian consulate in Syria was a big deal. It was an escalation, especially as seen through the eyes of the Iranian regime. It killed an important figure, and according to Iran, and of course, according to many analysts as well, violated international law by attacking a diplomatic facility. So Iran has to respond. I mean, that part is not in doubt. The question now is, how does it respond? And will the way that it responds escalate the tensions in the region even further than they have been escalating over the past few months? Iran has several options, of course, when it comes to retaliation. It could respond with a direct attack into Israel, which would be the most severe of all the options. It could respond in kind, which means attacking an Israeli diplomatic facility in another country, in a third country, or of course, it could not attack at all. So those are the options that it's weighing right now. Each, of course, comes with its own set of ramifications.
Absolutely. And of course, I imagine that for Iran, the goal is to perhaps retaliate without getting the U.S. involved. I mean, how likely is it that the U.S., we've just heard Biden talking about ironclad support. What is the U.S.'s role in all this?
Exactly. And that's something that the Iranians are definitely going to be taking into consideration. We've seen this over and over again in the last few months with both attacks against the U.S. By Iranian proxies, as well as this attack now by Israel against Iran in Syria. This balance that all the actors in the region right now are trying to maintain between showing their strength while at the same time not going so far as to sort of light the whole region on fire. It's a very delicate balance, and every single step that one of these actors take is a risk of there is a risk of miscalculation. Now, you've seen the U.S. talk to its Arab allies in the region, asking them to send messages to Iran, telling them that the U.S. doesn't want an escalation either. So it's a very delicate dance that all these players are playing right now. Iran wants to retaliate because, of course, if it doesn't, it loses face in front of its proxies. I mean, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas have all been playing their part, so to speak, when it comes to the resistance movement against Israel over the last few months. And so if the patron of these movements itself doesn't do anything to respond to this attack, it will not look good. And so Iran is going to have to do something, at least to match the moves of its proxies over the last few months, but without going so far, as you said, to drag the U.S. into it. Now, I'm sure in these behind the scenes conversations that are happening with U.S. allies and Iran, as well as between the U.S. and Israel, there are scenarios being played out and red lines being drawn to try to decide what the U.S. will do, where it will come in, and where it will stand back. Of course, the one thing that we can all be sure of is that if there is a strike directly inside Israel, that the U.S. is absolutely going to be obligated to come to the defense of its ally. But I don't think we're going to see things go that far.
Well, that is one red line that is definite. Even as you say, it's unlikely. Now, speaking of diplomatic back and forth, the talks on ending this campaign in Gaza are stalled once again. From an outsider's perspective, from someone who doesn't really follow the news very much, it could look like there hasn't really been any evolution at all since the beginning of the conflict in October. Is that true? Is that something that you can confirm?
I wouldn't blame outsiders for thinking that no progress has been made, because even though we hear from the mediators and the negotiators, so the Qataris, the Egyptians, and the Americans, that progress is being made, and we've heard a few times now that we're mere days away from a deal, every single time, either Hamas or Israel or both will backtrack at the last minute, either by throwing in a demand that wasn't on the table before, or by doing something incredibly egregious, like, for example, this Israeli strike on Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh's sons and grandsons or grandchildren inside of Gaza. So, what one can deduce from that, I think, is that both sides are feeling incredible pressure not to make a deal that will be seen by their supporters as giving too much of a concession to the other side. Prime Minister Netanyahu is under incredible pressure domestically in Israel. People, the majority of Israelis, are already incredibly upset at how he's handling the war. The same goes for Hamas. A lot of the Palestinians in Gaza, many, are upset at the way this has been handled. And so these sides are under incredible pressure to come out of these negotiations, at least being able to say, well, look, we got you this. For Prime Minister Netanyahu to say, well, at least I got these hostages back. Or for Hamas to say, well, at least, we released all Palestinian prisoners and detainees from Israeli jails. And so they're really hesitant to sign something that could potentially be used against them by the other side and pointed to as a weakness on their side.
Yeah, exactly. They're really, really looking to their constituents, to their populations, to decide on that. Thank you so much, Jasmine El-Gamal, joining us from Amman, Jordan, with that in-depth look at the situation there.